Hello, this is Dan from Executron Development Corporation. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up, configure, and process AppleCare and AppleCare Plus through PIMS. This will be the same for PIMS SQL and the new PIMS-Gold application. I'm going to start out by showing you how to sell and process AppleCare as part of your normal sales procedure. Let's begin by selling an iPad and selling some AppleCare with it. I'll go ahead and start a new order. I'll enter a customer on it. And now let's go ahead and sell the iPad. Pick this iPad. Now it's set up to prompt us for a serial number. These are in our system already. I'll go ahead and pick the first serial number for it. And then it automatically comes up and prompts us for AppleCare. Again, I'll go into how this can be set up later. I'll go ahead and select the AppleCare. Again, this is a good way with auto loads to make sure your salesperson is reminded to sell AppleCare with it. I'll select it. And because I selected AppleCare, it came up with a prompt. And in this prompt, I would have a list of all the items on this order. We just happen to have one here. And I can select that by double-clicking it. It will fill in the hardware serial number for us. And we also have first name, last name, and company. You can modify these if you like. They default to whatever is on the order. And device purchase date. PIMS knows that we're purchasing it or the customer is purchasing it today and defaults to today's date. Again, I'll go into these parameters in a little bit. Go ahead and select it. Say they're paying cash, and we'll go ahead and print the order out. You'll see that AppleCare is being processed right now, and we're done. Let's go ahead and print that order to the screen. Now you'll see on here that the serial number is added to the part number of the item. Here is the name of the AppleCare. And down here is the necessary disclaimer information filled in with specifics from this particular sale that Apple requires on the printed order. Go ahead and hit cancel. And now we're ready to run another one. Okay, this time let's sell an AppleCare that's a little more involved. We're going to sell an iMac and sell a display with it. Both of these will be wrapped under the same AppleCare agreement. So let's go ahead and list ourselves on there. So this time we're going to sell an iMac. So let's go ahead and pull up the iMac. There it is. We'll pick a serial number for it. And this time we have both a display and AppleCare as part of the auto loads. We'd like to always remind the salesperson to try to sell a display if they can. We'll go ahead and select both of these. We'd like to sell them. And now I'm prompted for the serial number of the display. Now you'll notice we have both listed on here. I double-click on the first one for the hardware and the second one for the secondary hardware serial number. Again, nothing else needs to be changed on here. We'll leave it at the defaults, and I'll hit select. All the items are loaded on here, and this time you'll see AppleCare Protection Plan for iMac, and you'll see both serial numbers listed for it. And we'll go ahead and process. I'll print it out. Again, you'll notice that the information is being sent to Apple. We've got our response back, and let's go ahead and show it on the screen. It might be a little small in the final video, but you'll see the device ID and the display serial number both listed here. And this default text has been put together to show both of these. So we'll go ahead and hit cancel and get ready to do another one. Okay, I'm going to show you how to sell AppleCare as a standalone product, basically not in conjunction with a hardware sale. So let's say that someone has brought an iPhone in and they'd like to get AppleCare for it. So after you do the necessary hardware verification and check on it, you're ready to sell them AppleCare. So I'll go ahead and enter us in there as a customer. I'll enter the AppleCare product. Pick it for iPhone. You'll notice there aren't any serial numbers to choose from, obviously, because we don't have any hardware loaded to our order. And I just happen to have an iPhone serial number. And again, you would manually enter it here. All the other information is the same, but on device purchase date, because PIMS knows that you are not buying it in, or they are not buying it in conjunction with a piece of hardware on the same order, PIMS will actually default the purchase date to the day before and not the same date. And this helps with compatibility with Apple's AppleCare Connect. Now, if for whatever reason you need to change the device purchase date, you simply click on this area here and choose a different date. I'll choose the day before that. Then you hit select. You've got your AppleCare and you've got your serial number added to it. So we'll say they're paying cash, and we'll go ahead and print the order out. You notice that it's checking with the Apple Connect server, and now we'll just display it on the screen. And here you have your AppleCare only and the necessary Apple proof of coverage text. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to cancel, basically refund the AppleCare if a customer wishes to cancel it. So let's go ahead and list one of the orders we've already done. I'll pick the first one here. I believe that was our iPad and AppleCare. And let's say they wanted a refund on both of these. So I'll go ahead and manipulate line items. I will select both of the items, and I'll refund the selected products. Now, because that order was posted, meaning that it's probably the next day, and you've already done the accounting on it, PIMS knew that and brought up a brand new order and went ahead and set the quantities to -1. So they paid cash, so I'll go ahead and refund them their cash. And now I'll go ahead and print the order. And PIMS has already processed it, and I'll show you the subsequent invoice. And right here it says AppleCare agreement number blah 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 for device ID blah 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 has been canceled. And this invoice totally qualifies with Apple for doing refunds. And that customer has now been refunded. Okay, I'm going to do one more AppleCare sale. This time I'm going to do it basically in real time, as though one of your salespeople were actually doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a new order. I'll just pretend we're an existing customer and enter us in. And I'm going to sell an iPad. Whoops, would help if I spelled it right. iPad. And I'll pick the iPad. Here are my available serial numbers. Here is the AppleCare prompt for it. Now I'm being prompted to select a device. Everything else here is fine. Select. And I think I'll add some software with that. And I'll also add that one along with it. So I've got my sale here. And let's see, I'll go ahead and select that they are paying by credit card. I'll go ahead and process it. It came back okay. I'll now print the order. PIMS is prompting us for a signature. We'll use our PIMS SigPad iOS app to sign it.
Please sign at the line provided below.
And I'll just put my signature in. It's a really cool app. And there it is. And now we'll go ahead and look at it. And there's our AppleCare sale, our iPad sale, some extra software. Right in the middle of it is the Apple proof of coverage statement that is required. And there's our signature down there. So you've got all your bases covered here. And you can see that it was done quickly, accurately, and with little or no additional thought that your salespeople have to be involved in. I'd like to take this opportunity to show you a few additional functions that we have in the system before we start talking about the setup. So I'm going to start by going to an order, and you'll see a menu up here, APP. When I go down to it, you have the AppleCare Connect 360 function and also the Verify Eligibility function. Let's start with the 360. It'll bring up the standard device serial number prompt that you're already familiar with. I just happen to have a serial number here, and I'm going to hit select. It's contacting the Apple server, and this will bring up the 360 information on that particular piece of hardware. And you'll see all the status, what's available. This kind of gives you a heads up if someone is coming in with a piece of hardware and they want to know whether or not the item is currently covered. Let's say it's not covered, and you'd like to check the availability of AppleCare for it. That's where we'd go to the Verify Eligibility. I'll put that same serial number in there, select, and it lets us know that there's an AppleCare plan already pending for this device. And actually, this is the type of error message you would get on any of the AppleCare Connect functions in PIMS if an error is returned. This is what you'll get, and whatever process you're in, either printing the invoice, saving it, anything of that nature, will be aborted, and you'll have to deal with the problem. Also, on a service repair order, the 360 is also available. Now I'd like to talk about setup and what you need to set up in PIMS to get this to operate. It's basically two sections. One will be setting up your inventory, and the second will be setting up the necessary settings to communicate with the AppleCare Connect server. Let's go ahead and start with inventory. I'll just list today's modified. I have a couple of AppleCare products on here. Let's go ahead and pull one up. Now, PIMS knows that this is an AppleCare Connect product from the service info area. I click on this, go to Apple GSX, and right here, it's an AppleCare and product protection plan. You just check this checkbox. PIMS will know from this point out that processing needs to be done for this particular item. Some other things that you might want to do is set it to non-taxable, exclude from reorder, even though it wouldn't show up there anyway. Don't adjust on hands. You're not going to be purchasing and selling this item as a boxed unit, so no reason to adjust the on hands. It'll always be 0. And also, optionally, net item. That means your salespeople will not be able to discount this item unless they belong to a special password group, which they normally don't belong to. And that's all you have to do to set up your AppleCare product. And as a point of interest for this video, our costs have been set to the retail price for privacy reasons. That's all you need to do to set up your inventory. Optionally, for those of you that want to set up the auto loads, I'll bring up our iMac, and I'll go to our auto load section. And right here, you'll see that in this particular item, we have the monitor and the AppleCare plan. And you would just click Add Item to add those. Okay, now we're going to talk about the necessary settings in PIMS to allow it to communicate with the AppleCare Connect server. These settings are found in your service repair module and in your GSX settings. These settings are specific to a particular location, for those of you that have multiple locations, but we'll just deal with our main location. I click on the AppleCare Connect tab, and here's the section where you set it up. Now, it's assumed already that you've been in contact with Apple and you have been approved for the program, and they have issued you a test certificate. And you would do a certificate request, send it to Apple. Apple will send a certificate back to you, and that certificate needs to be modified slightly to work with PIMS. But it's not the scope of this video to go into that. Your PIMS reseller can help you with that, and in this case, it's the Mac Experience. And all you have to do is click Activate AppleCare Connect to activate it in PIMS. We've set test mode here. I'm using the AppleCare Connect UAT test server for this video. Again, you would just click this if you are yourself doing a test and to get authorized through the system when Apple gives you a series of tests to run. Pre-verify UPS address. If this is checked, PIMS will use the U.S. Postal Service address verification function to verify the address that you have on the order prior to running it through AppleCare Connect. And to use this function, you need to have a license through the U.S. Postal Service to do that. So we'll just leave this unchecked for now. It's not required. You would enter your ship to code, and you would also pick your time zone. Just by clicking in here, you can select from the different time zones that are compatible with the AppleCare Connect system. Down here is where you enter your host server. In this particular case, we're using the UAT server. And if you click on here, it will give you a list of servers to choose from. This information here is static. It's the same for whichever AppleCare Connect server you are directed to choose. So basically, this information doesn't change. It is user modifiable if necessary, just in case Apple changes things in the future. Down here is your SSL client certificate. Apple will usually give you one test certificate and one production certificate. And you would simply click this button, and a prompt will come up, and you will select, in our case, the test certificate, and PIMS will go ahead and add it to the system. This is stored in your data file, and all terminals will have access to it. You do not need to install this certificate in your operating system, and you certainly do not need to do it for each terminal. You click load, select it, PIMS will load it here, and that is the very last time you need to deal with it. And here's where you would enter the passphrase for it that you created when you sent the certificate request to Apple. Down here is the Apple Proof of Coverage line item template. This is what you saw printed on the line item for each AppleCare sold on an order. And in it, it has tags. And these tags are replaced with information from that line item, basically from that AppleCare transaction. To load the default text that has already been vetted by Apple, say Load Default Template. I'll click it, I'll say Load, and nothing changed because we're using the default one. If in the future Apple does change the verbiage, here are the available fields from AppleCare Connect and PIMS. And you would simply double-click, and it would add it wherever your cursor is. But for the foreseeable future, you're basically going to want to just keep it to the default text. Processor mode isn't important. This is basically for future use and compatibility. Check liveliness. If you click this, it will check to see if Apple's server is running, the particular server you have selected. If it's not, it will come back with an error message. Let's just assume Apple's AppleCare Connect server does not go down, and probably won't. Save log files. When this is checked, every single transaction done between PIMS and the AppleCare Connect server is exported with the request and the response back from the server and saved in a folder at the root level of your client application. And if you ever need to bring up that information, you are having a problem connecting to AppleCare Connect, and Apple asks you for your original request and the response sent back by the server, it would be in that folder. And tremendous tool if you're running into issues. During most of the testing, and when we were programming this, we really didn't run into any issues. It's pretty bulletproof. Once you have everything configured and your certificates loaded, you can test AppleCare Connect by clicking this button. And it will go ahead and do a 360 response. In production mode, it uses the actual serial number of the machine it's running on. In test mode, it uses a canned serial number. If that comes up, you know that all of your settings and your certificate are fine. If not, it will come up with an error message and tell you what's wrong. If you click on this icon, it will actually show you your certificate. Here's basically what Apple sends back to you, and when I'd mentioned it needs to be modified, you need to add your original private key on top of it. Again, it's not in the scope of this video to show you how to do that, but your reseller can give you a hand with it. Here's an excellent feature right here. If you check this, suggest AppleCare on SRO under limited warranty, and days remaining before you suggest, basically what this will do, and I'll show you later on in the video, this will prompt the service tech when they're looking up the serial number on a particular piece of hardware, when they're adding it to a service repair order, it will prompt them and let them know that the Apple limited warranty is almost up by whatever number of days in here that you enter. And at that point, the technician can have the discretion of suggesting that they purchase AppleCare for the particular item being serviced. And again, I'll show you that later. And one more mention is don't use authentication token. Originally, I'll uncheck it for now, Apple had a user ID and a password that you had to enter. These are now obsolete. Apple does everything with the certificate. So for those of you new users setting up, you simply want to check that. And those fields will go away and they will not be transmitted to Apple. So be sure from this point on, check this when you're doing your setup. And you just hit save. And that's all you need to do to set up. Again, your reseller can give you a hand with this. One of the advantages of using PIMS is that the PIMS software has already been certified through Apple. We worked very carefully with them for the development of this, and when they know you're running PIMS, they know this is going to work. It's all a matter of testing your certificate and some of your other settings, and that's it. Go ahead and hit save, and you're ready to use AppleCare Connect. Okay, here are a few other things you need to know when dealing with AppleCare Connect and PIMS. One thing I want to show you in your service and repair module, under the GSX menu, you can go down and say list all AppleCare processed. What this will do is this will produce a listing showing you the date of every AppleCare that was run through PIMS, the agreement number and the invoice number, serial number, the actual product, the AppleCare product that is, and the PO number sent to Apple as part of the transaction, and the location code if you have multiple locations. the sales rep that sold it, and this information over here shows whether or not it was canceled. If it was canceled, it gives you the order number, the date, and the time. Dealing back with the PO number, the PO number is set to your invoice number and the line item. So in this particular case, this is the AppleCare that was sold on this invoice number on line item number 2. You can report on this selection, and you can use this to help reconcile against your Apple invoices that are coming in. And we also have a plugin available for you Apple resellers that will help you automate the reconciliation process of AppleCare against the Apple invoices coming in. Another great function that I had referenced during the settings part of the video is the ability to have a prompt come up when a service tech enters and checks a piece of equipment on an SRO. So I'll go ahead and show you that. Let's do a new SRO. I'll just go straight to the equipment tab, and I have a piece of equipment here. This piece of equipment from Apple is currently under the limited warranty available when they purchase the equipment, but it's getting close to running out. So I'll just click our globe here to look it up in GSX. And here's the information brought back from GSX. As a point of interest, Apple no longer returns images for some reason. When I hit done, this is what pops up, again due to the setting that we set in our AppleCare Connect settings. The Apple Limited Warranty on this device has roughly 52 days remaining, should we sell them AppleCare. And hitting OK just makes the dialog box go away. It doesn't actually sell them AppleCare, but this is a reminder for the technician to bring up the fact that maybe AppleCare would be a really good thing to buy right now before any service is done to it. And again, the whole crux of this is to sell as much AppleCare as you can. It's really great on your bottom line margins. Sometimes when selling AppleCare, you need to tweak the information a little bit, possibly, on a line item before it's processed. I'm going to show you where that information is and how to do it. So let's go ahead and create an order. Throw us on there. And let's go ahead and do another iPad. Actually, I'll put it over here. Pick the iPad. Pick the last serial number. Actually, yeah, I'll go ahead and pick the last one. I'll grab the AppleCare, the number, and I will select it. Normally, I would just print it out right now and be done with it. However, I need to do a little bit more to it before we sell it. Double click on the line item, and down here you'll see the Apple Protection Plan button. I click on it, and this brings up information concerning that particular line item before it's processed. Here's the serial number I entered. If for some reason I need to change the serial number because I selected the wrong one, I can simply click on the word serial here. You'll notice it's underlined, meaning it's a button. And from there, I can either select from the listing, or I can go down here and manually type one in. I could also type them into these fields if I had to. I can change the name, company, and more importantly, the sales dates. There are occasions, though rare, when you would need to sell or change the date of when the AppleCare is actually being sold. Same with the hardware. And again, these are underlined, meaning they're buttons. Click on it. You can either type in or select a different date for either of these. And the agreement number and all this information right now is blank because we haven't run it. And reconciled is part of that reconciliation plugin I had mentioned earlier that lets you know when each one of these has been reconciled. GSX APP product. Basically, this lets you know that this is an AppleCare Connect product. If, for whatever reason, it keeps failing, maybe you've lost internet or something like that, and you need to make the sale, then if you absolutely have to, you could uncheck this, hit done, print out the invoice. It's not going to process it, but you're going to be able to make the sale. And then you can go back in later, bring this back up, check it, run it, and it will go ahead and process the AppleCare. Again, this is available, but let's hope you don't have to use it for any reason. Coverage statement, this would be the actual statement that's printed out on the line item. It uses that template that you saw in AppleCare Connect settings. And this would be the actual line item printed, basically the proof of coverage statement. And right here is the last call sent. This is the last request sent to the Apple server. So if you need to modify any of those, you do it right here. As a matter of fact, let's go into some orders that have already been run. I'll bring up this one. Let's go to the AppleCare. Let's go here. Here's the agreement number, the PO, all the information that was sent. Here's the actual coverage statement. And here's the actual last bit of information sent. Now, one thing I'd like to mention, for those of you that are doing your UAT testing, it's a series of transactions Apple will have you run, and then Apple will verify that information, and this is proof that you basically know what you're doing and everything's working fine. Now, one of the things you need to do when you're going through these tests is to paste into an Excel spreadsheet your request and the response sent back from Apple's server. Let me show you how we've automated that feature for you. I'm going to go ahead and do a transaction. I'll do it for an iPad. And we'll go ahead and do AppleCare for it. And I'm going to go ahead and run it. I'm not going to bother printing it out. I'm just going to save. It'll go ahead and run it. And it went through because we have a nice new blank invoice. Now then, Apple wants to have the request sent from our system and the response sent back from their system pasted into that spreadsheet. Well, I'll show you a little trick here. I'm going to bring up a blank text editor, and all I'm going to do is hit paste. And it's a little hard to see, but here is the request, and here is the response. And basically, PIMS will put it on the clipboard when you're in test mode and you've run any of the transactions that are required. So all you've got to do is, again, this is sitting in the clipboard. You just click on the field in Excel as part of your certification and simply hit paste. And all the necessary information will be put in there in the exact format Apple wants it in. It makes your certification testing very, very easy that way. Okay, this concludes the video on PIMS and AppleCare Connect. Thank you.